Bapa do bapa dee dee dee, folks. Welcome to your weekend. Listen, I usually have been putting the summer charm, the summer. Let's just call it summer charm. I usually been keeping the summer house and Southern Charm recap separate, but today we have a special interview with Rod from Southern Charm. So I figured let's make this its separate episode because I have some things to talk about in regards to the Southern Charm reunion, but I also want to take you back to the beginning of Southern Charm and kind of go through why a lot of us think this show is based around a boys' club. And I don't think they need to shy away from this fact. I think they need to lean into it. And by being a boys' club, it does not mean we are heaping praise. In a lot of ways, we are looking at a train wreck sometimes, and that can be very entertaining. I mean, think about Shep Rose's journey. We saw him start out on Southern Charm, and there's even a clip in the reunion way back in the day saying, "Well, I hope I'm not in my 40s going after some 20-year-old." And now we have come full circle as we saw that happen, and Sienna kind of gave it right back to him. Kind of didn't screw him over, but did not like him. Did not give back. She wasn't buying him shark tooth necklaces, basically. But I think Southern Charm is an interesting show in so many ways, but also because it lets us in on a part of the country or a part of society that I wasn't familiar with. So it is these kind of good old boys. Now, sometimes that means the women of Southern Charm have always taken a back seat. I mean, the matriarch of this show is Miss Patricia, and I do love Miss Patricia. But at the same time, what about the other women? We have come and gone through so many women on this show. And yes, a lot of men have fallen off this show in seasons. I mean, this is a show that started with Thomas Ravenel, and we no longer have Thomas Ravenel, right? So I want to kind of go through all of that. Now, in the reunion itself, I also want to talk about the appearance between Craig, Shep, and Austin on Andy Cohen's Watch What Happens Live, where I talked a little bit about this on the Summer House recap because he was on there. At this point, if I was Craig's lawyer, and I know Craig is a lawyer and a storyteller, is that he should just, listen, dude, just stop commenting. Stop commenting. Internalize the pain, go see a therapist, talk to your boys. I mean, I just think you're going to step in it every time you comment on it, because even if it makes sense to you, you will find out really quick that it doesn't necessarily make sense to us. And Craig, come on, even if you dislike Craig, you have to I think you have to agree that he is a somewhat charming person. And if we are going, and this is a very low bar in terms of growth of men on reality shows, Craig is somebody that is at least trying to show some sort of growth. Whether you agree that he is growing or not is inconsequential in ways. I mean, like I told Rod in this interview that I'm like, if I had a flippin' backyard that looked that nice, you would never see me again. And by the way, folks, if that is something that you are interested in, I will do a GoFundMe to build me a backyard, and you will be done with the show. You'll never have to hear from me again. I get a Craig backyard, I'm done. That's why I'm going to retire the day I get a Craig Conover backyard with a pool and jacuzzi, and I'm going to ask for Craig to give me some of his beer koozies. I mean, that's the dream, right? But sometimes the dream doesn't really align with what we look for in reality television. Now, our baser instincts, and we are sometimes reticent to admit this, is that we want mess. We want people taking big swings and having big misses. We want to be horrified, because if we are horrified about them, we look less inward sometimes on ourselves and our own horrific situations, right? You're like, well, at least I've never bought a shark tooth necklace. Like, there's a weird comfort in that. But it's hard because we have now had 10 seasons of building up these male friendships, and the women have come and gone. So it is sometimes this like, it's a really hard task that the women of Southern Charm have, because we are not going to automatically be drawn to these storylines with the women because we have so much history with the men. Now, sometimes you will get, like, I mean, Madison is like a Miss Patricia in training. Madison is a Miss Patricia with like way less income. And I think she will eventually get there. But it is almost like there will be a passing of the baton potentially from Miss Patricia to Madison. Because I always think, how do you keep Madison in this show? Because She has a stable relationship with a really hot dude that beat cancer. She has now a baby on the way and a mother to a son. That's a pretty normal lifestyle. So, how do we get her involved? Is it just having arguments about JT having a weird conversation with her husband? Maybe. Is it her being in the Cameron Eubanks role, who Cameron used to be on the show, and her being the narrator, the reliable narrator, and somebody that comments on everybody's relationship? How do you keep this show going? And I've postulated or theorized last week that maybe you just lean into this show being a man's show. And I don't mean a man's show for men, but a man's show for women. So women and myself, we can sit there and laugh at these silly, silly men. There are obviously greater ramifications, and sometimes these things can be a horror show, but maybe that's a place to start. That's just a suggestion. Now, before we get to Rodrigo, and remember, there are timestamps on this podcast, so you can skip right to that interview, or you can skip right to the recap afterwards. But in terms of the reunion itself, I think this is going to be a two-part reunion. I got scared because they were moving through things pretty quickly on the first part that I thought, oh my God, is this only a one-part reunion? And then I realized we hadn't even gotten to the Craig and Austin making up on the beach in the Bahamas. But basically, the storylines that we focused on in the first part are Craig and Paige's breakup. We did a little bit of that. We got Madison LaCroix's personal news in regards to she came out with a big old baby bump. We have the JT and Venita storyline being brought up. I'm still very confused on the timeline of these things. And Rodrigo, or Rod, we were talking, he's like, you should have had a whiteboard where we went through each character. And I was like, that is such a brilliant idea. And how dare me not think of that? Because I would have loved to have had Rod just take me through a whiteboard of what was the connection here and there, and what is the Venita JT timeline for all of these things. It seems very confusing. And also, it was very lopsided in the sense that I feel like the main crux of the action was between Shep and Sienna. I thought that's when the show really took off. And then the B storyline would be the friendship between Craig and Austin. And then to me, the C storyline would be JT and Venita. We also had Shep and Molly's relationship status, talked about that, because remember, she was almost, it felt very almost pressured into giving Shep a mercy fuck. Giving Shep to try to get his old confidence back, right? And then we also talked a little bit about JT returning to the show because JT quit the show while they were, after filming, but while they were doing like talking heads and stuff. Remember, he quit, but he came back. So that's what we got in the first part. Now let's go on over to our conversation with Rod. This was so fun. We got to do this in person. He was here to, Southern Charm actually was up for a GLAAD award for its work in the Gay and Lesbian Alliance. And I think that's amazing. And I think it's amazing when shows in general can show that we all have different lifestyles that should be celebrated, that should be paid attention to. We do not need to make I mean, we are all equal in my eyes. And I love when shows are recognized because, something that was taught to me at a very young age is that you want to see yourself represented on television. And that might sound like a crazy thought, but think about it. It's really true. And me being a white straight dude, I see myself represented all the time. I'm like, well, there's not a problem for me. I see my story everywhere. And I see my story so much that I get bored of my own story. But what I get excited about, and what I think drew me to reality television in the first place, was that it allowed me to see so many other people's walks of life. Whether it be females, whether it be sexuality, whether it be location. I never probably would in a million years know what Dubai even looked like or looked like at all if it wasn't for Real Housewives of Dubai. Would I ever be in a gated community in Orange County? You bet your sweet bippy I wouldn't. Would I ever be amongst a group of high-profile women in New York working on their second divorces? Never in a million years. But you see that even in these little spaces that I'm usually not invited in, that there is, we can recognize things. There's commonalities that draw us all together. And I think that is the magic and the power. Now, what I also love is that they don't hit you over the head with it. It's just there because that's what life is. We're all just trying to get through this life. And I think, Rod, he'll be the first to admit that he's not the focal point in any way, in any stretch of the imagination on Southern Charm. But what I do love talking to Rod, and what you'll hear, is that this dude has had relationships with all of these people for so long. Rod was in the first season of Southern Charm, and he goes, thank God they didn't show me, but he was there. He's kind of grown up in a way with all of these guys, with these cast members. He has real relationships. And you guys know, if you listen to the show, that's so important to me, for these people to have real relationships. I think at least, if you're watching Summer House, I said on the recap yesterday, you can't argue that some of these people seem to really want to be there, and they're having fun, and that they actually seem to be in each other's lives in some capacity. Now, Southern Charm, the same thing. Now, I was a little shocked that everybody was so shocked that Madison came out with a baby bump. Rod talks about that a little bit in the interview as well. But you do know that these people have history with each other. And if they have history with each other, that does so much of the heavy lifting. I would much rather watch that on Southern Charm than, say, the first season of the reboot of Roni, when we were getting to know these ladies while the ladies were getting to know each other. It was like, wait, why am I here watching you do your homework? Why am I getting to the place where I know these ladies as well as the cast members know each other? That's sort of ridiculous, and it gives it like this uphill battle where you're not going to see real relationships until the third season of Roni, if they have a third season. This is all just my opinion. You can totally disagree with it, and that's what I love about our audience, is that we can have disagreements, but at the same time, we're family, and we're all working towards the same goal, and that is to get me a Craig Conover-style backyard. That is our goal. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to cut to Rod right now. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about the reunion, Watch What Happens Live, and the originations of Southern Charm. Hope you guys are having the best start to your weekend. I'll talk to you in a sec. Bappa do bappa DTT, folks. This is so bad it's good. We are celebrating the 10th season of Southern Charm. We are on the first part of the reunion, which I just watched. I really actually dug the reunion a lot. And we have one of the main cast members with us. You know him as the only Rod that we care about at this time. Rod Reyes, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
What are you in town for?
I'm in town for the GLAAD Awards. The show was nominated for, I think, unscripted reality show in that category for my inclusion in the show, which is, it's kind of an honor to think that.
It really is.
To have, to be a voice in, I guess, the Bravo sphere, one person.
Well, and also what I love about Southern Charm, and especially your inclusion on it, or even Southern Hospitality to a degree, is that it's just normal. It's not something, it's like, you just hang out. You're friends with people. That's it. There's no big, a special episode of Southern Charm.
Oh, yeah. I'm wiping away gay tears, in the closed captioning, gay tears.
Exactly.
No, it's how it is. I see and hang out with everybody that's on the cast. But in real life, these are my friends that I hang out with all the time. So
see, that's what I think is important. And if you could walk me through I always think the best reality shows come from real relationships, and you actually had real relationships with a lot of this cast beforehand. So what was your entrance point onto the show? So
I met Shep. I met Shep 15, 16 years ago. He
pre-buying Megalodon teeth.
Yeah, he was strictly doing cat teeth back then.
He worked his way up.
Yeah, he worked his way up. He got the courage to get go to Shark, then Megalodon. But I met him through some mutual friends, and we, we'd always have house parties. And one time, Shep then brought his friend. He's like, "Hey, I'm bringing my friend with me," and his friend was Whitney. And that's when I met Whitney. So I just remember that night. At that point, I'd known Shep for, a few months, and then maybe about a year, and then met Whitney. And then I remember going back to Whitney's house at the time. He's just all right, after
Miss Patricia's house.
Yeah, back in the day. So, and I remember. It's just funny. Everyone's kind of congregating in the kitchen. Whitney's in the living room at my friend's house when he first comes over. sees that his documentary on Halston was on TV, and he literally changes the channel and then tries to get everybody. Mind you, he just met most of these people. He's trying to like corral everyone into the living room to watch his documentary
on Halston.
Yeah, and I was actually very fascinated by the whole thing because I remember when in college I came across a Halston like ultra suede blazer that I was like obsessed with. So then in my mind I was like, oh, this is actually kind of really interesting and cool.
Yeah.
And so I was like,
but a house party, that's a hard ask to stop a party and have everybody watch a documentary.
I'm like, hey, stop, put down that vodka. Let's go in here and like check out Halston. But no, and that's how, we hung out at that point, so many friends for years and years. And I've like same thing with Leva. Like
well, you're close with, you're close with Austin, right? Yeah. You're close with Taylor. You're close with, you seem like you have these real relationships, which I also wanted to ask you. We just got the announcement from Leva yesterday about leaving the show. Yeah. I think she's going to still be on Southern Hospitality, which is based around Republic. How did you feel about that?
Like Leva gave me a little of a heads up before she, kind of announced it to everybody else. And, what I said to her, I was like, I'm proud of you. I mean, it's important for you to kind of take a step back and prioritize more time with your family and, this other show that you have that's,
and she's got blossoming. Like 8 businesses on King Street, it seems like.
I mean, how many? There's 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, there's 5. Like 5 on King Street. I mean, she's just running the block.
Well, so what was your then entrance point of who asked you to be on the show first? Did Whitney suggest it? Did Shep suggest it?
It was probably Shep. At that point, because I had known everybody for such a long time, but at the beginning of the show, I was still bartending and waiting. So I'm like, there's nothing like that glamorous that nobody wants to see it's funny. People do want to see
I was like,
the life of a Southern like bartender / waiter, but this ain't the show for that. And I understood that. So, eventually, like I started my own interior design business, and at that point, I think, it seems a little more appealing to be like, Rod.
Did you watch the show since you knew all of these guys? Like, did you get a kick out of like, oh my God, Shep, that's crazy?
Well, like season 1, like I was there like season 1. I filmed a bunch of stuff like season 1. I was mic'd for, events and parties, and I'm just happy that none of that ever aired. I'm like, for real. I was like,
well, you go back and watch clips of those earlier seasons, and it's really wild to chaotic. See Craig, and he looks so different than he does now. Yeah. All of it, they just look like boys.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, like, when you watch these old episodes, knowing them, I keep coming back to, and I think I was watching the finale, and I was like, we have to accept that this show, in some ways, is about these boys to men.
Yeah.
Is that they have all of these strong female characters, but the entrance point is all of these men.
They're the cattiest group of guys on the planet. It's like it has been fun to like see them in real time, actually growing up and progressing and then regressing, and but it's to see in the beginning. I think that's kind of how Southern Hospitality is now, where I think people are a little. There's no inhibition well,
you're in your 20s. It's like there's a different, like they act like everything has like the biggest stakes ever, which I appreciate. But I remember back to my 20s when I thought, oh my God, it's going to be the end of the world. I'm in a fight with this person. And then you get a little older and maybe a little wiser, and you realize that's why I kind of dig Southern Hospitality, because you're like, guys, it's all going to be okay.
To really think like the people that have, I've cried over the years. I'm like,
yes.
I'm like, what?
Exactly.
I'm like, how much fucking sleep did I lose over this?
But see, that's what's funny. It's like, that's why in some ways you are one of the voice of reasons on this show, because we have these men nearing or in their 40s. And we have, this season, one of my favorite storylines was the Shep Sienna storyline.
Yeah.
You had a VR firsthand seat into watching all of that go down, hearing the text about the freckles. And to me, that was like, it was, he meant it, but at the same time, it was hysterically funny, even though you saw him going through something. Yeah. What is that like to be there in person and to be his friend at the same time?
You just like, even just talking about it, thinking back on it, I was like, I need a lorazepam.
Parker Posey, you steal her lorazepam.
I was like, I need that, because it gives me a little anxiety, because it is kind of it's absolutely hilarious. Like, let's not like.
I mean, yeah, I hope we can remember it is funny, and I think Shep even kind of sees the joke a little bit.
Yeah,
now.
at this point, you kind of got to roll with the punches. You put it all out there. I mean, you did it, good or bad, you did it. But I think people question was this real? I'm like, of course it was.
But we question everything now. Nowadays, we're a conspiracy-filled society.
Yeah.
And I also with Scandal, people still question if that was real. And I was like, guys, it was real. It was real.
Yeah.
And you're saying this was definitely real.
Yeah. I mean, this is like too sad to be fake. I'm like, I mean, it's just like, this is, he really put it out there. I think he thought that he could charm her more than he did.
Yeah.
Eventually. But I think that, Shep just felt like she saw greener pastures elsewhere. I
mean, yeah, we find out in the reunion that she's like working with some Denver Broncos football player potentially.
Yeah.
Which I found fascinating. But it was also interesting because what I found horrifying in some ways is that Taylor, who was with Shep, is there on the trip. Now, she's with Gaston now, and they seem to be happy, but it's like got to be the wildest thing of like, imagine one of your past boyfriends, you have to stay on a reality show with them past the expiration date of the relationship.
I mean, but would you really want to miss that opportunity to be like front row in the Bahamas to watch...
there's one scene with Taylor texting on the bus, and I'm like,
tragedy.
I need her phone right now to see who she's texting, because Shep's talking about being, worried about Sienna.
I thought like one of the funnier times, like on that Bahamas trip, like came from like Madison and Taylor, like. Taylor kind of, we had just gotten there, we got that cabana, we're drinking poolside, and then Taylor's just being so messy, and it's just so like her and Madison laughing, talking about Sienna, and I was like, okay, this is so funny, because I think at that point, like, she was kind of like, well, I'm here for the mess. I don't have anything against Sienna. Sienna's not the reason why they broke up.
Yeah.
So I think it was easier for her to kind of go in there. It'd be one thing if I think she felt anything for Shep other than, I guess in that moment she felt a lot of like sympathy for him, but
well, she's a better person than I am, because that's a 3-year relationship, and it's just got to be hard to be around. And then I mean, that's like to give the Megalodon tooth necklace when she had gotten a form of a tooth necklace as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's highly comedic.
She's the model. She models that damn necklace on the website. I mean, like,
that's wild.
But I think like, I think she handled that
she did
really well. I think, what other option did she have?
No.
So
listen, I'm still mad at you. How do you leave without cashing in a $500 chip? How do you, I mean, like I actually spent 5 minutes just talking about that moment, because I was like, how do you leave if you know you have a $500 chip?
Okay. So I did not know this. So I'll go back. So that night, we have that awkward dinner from hell, which I don't even think the final edit showed. Like, she brought us like little tote bags with like hats.
Sienna did.
Yeah, like hats.
Oh, she brought you merch.
Yeah, like some little bag. And I think everyone literally was like, all right.
I would have bought that from you.
Well, because like she got like, gave it to everybody like before the dinner. The dinner literally goes south. And it's the most awkward dinner on the planet. And then she leaves, and I think all of us were like, okay, I guess we're literally just done with all this. Like, what's the point? And like, I don't need this hat. I don't got room in my luggage. It's like, sorry, I don't have any room for it. But, we left the dinner, and then we went down to the casino, me and the guys, which I'd never played craps in my life, but
seems like you're good if you won $500.
No, I won more than that. And the thing was, like, Craig and Austin were right there, and they were betting, and I made them like thousands of dollars. Like, I think.
And this was after the emotional reuniting of the two on the beach.
Yeah.
When they said that they loved each other and they wanted to be friends.
We all just had a lovely kumbaya moment at the craps table. Like, I mean,
see, I guess you can't film inside of casinos, but that would have been amazing to see.
Yeah.
I would have loved that.
I mean, literally, it was like, I don't know what I'm doing, and they explained it to me, and before you know, I was like, boom, 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 and I'm just throwing down. Before I know, I'm like throwing hundreds down at a time, and then I was like, this is pretty. I mean, this is awesome. Like, I'm just used to playing like the Wheel of Fortune slot machine.
Dude, that's my thing too. The Wheel of Fortune.
It's just like the announcer's voice. Like, there's something about that. It makes me feel like I'm like.
Oh yeah, like and then it just like I'm gonna quit after one more spin of the wheel.
Yeah.
One more spin of the wheel. Congratulations on your engagement, by the way.
Oh wait, hold on a minute. Tell you this. Like, so that poker chip. So when I found it, I literally was stunned, but Madison was going back to the same resort, like I think 2 weeks afterwards, after we filmed the finale. And she's like, I'll take it down there. So I drove to her house, dropped it off. I think she was out of town. She came back. She took it there. She FaceTimes me. Well, she's in our group chat. And she said, I have Rod's like $500 like poker chip. Should I like put it all on black or red? And at that point, like, I thought to myself, I was like hesitant, and everyone's like, come on, Rod, don't be a pussy. Austin's like, come on, like, go for it. And I'm like, at this point, I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I didn't even know I had, like, was missing that $500 to begin with. so if it doesn't come back, it is what it is. So I forget what I think I picked black, and she hit, and she came back with 1,000.
Okay, so you got the 1,000, but she comes into the reunion and everybody looks like they're surprised to see that she's like showing, like, but you guys are in each other's lives, right? Were you surprised as well?
I mean, I was surprised, but I knew something was up because I am constantly trying to like meet up with Madison because we had the best time like going to lunch, or, just having some cocktails and having a good kiki.
Yeah.
But there was always like something up, like, oh, I'm doing this, my mom's coming in town, this. And so, I've had friends that, hide their pregnancy for a while, and I think obviously she had some promotional things tied with that. So I'm like, why would you tell any of these loudmouth people? I completely understand.
You can't. As Craig says, you can't trust Austin.
Yeah.
You can't trust, So
I mean, we basically, we're always in contact, but it was just a matter of like not seeing each other physically because, she was always doing something else.
Yeah.
Probably doing like one of those I Love Lucy things where you're holding a box, like in, very cartoon, like to cover your stomach.
It would be great if the next season of Southern Charm, she still tries to hide the pregnancy and she's always just carrying in groceries.
Just always behind a counter.
She's in a fight with JT with groceries.
Yes.
Do you enjoy reunion experiences? Because you kind of go in, I would imagine, like, the brunt of the heat is not going to go on you.
Yeah.
You're kind of a reliable narrator where you can kind of give your opinions and throw in, but it's like Craig, Austin, Shep, like there's these different, or JT and Vanita we had this season. So do you enjoy it or do you still get nervous?
Well, it was a little nerve-wracking, but you're right. Like, I wasn't going in there, like, ready to face the firing squad. And, last year, I went into the reunion in the second half, and, it does kind of seem I come in a little bit hot. But, I'm thinking in that moment how, Taylor was kind of, like, being, like, wrecked by everybody. Like, everyone had an opinion. I mean, on her, and she was being demonized more than I think.
Well, yeah, because Olivia was demonizing her because of the Austin thing. Yeah. There was a lot of stuff she was going.
And I just didn't really like how nasty it felt towards her, and I didn't think that was fair. And I kind of was speaking up on her behalf, and then I have Olivia snap at me, and I was like, I mean, I'm sorry. You're not going to be snapping on me. Like, it's not cool. I haven't given you a reason to do that.
Yeah.
And I was like, we're friends, right? But what the hell is this all about? I was like, just dial it down. Like, she had so much like vitriol for everybody, and I get it. I mean, she was a woman,
Well, and part of that too is and part of that, I hear Craig or even people on other reality shows talk about this, is that they want to make good reality TV as well, or even like Shep. Shep didn't hide the Sienna thing; he put it all out there.
Yeah.
So I always wonder when it comes to reunion time if it's like a bunch of caged animals like ready to pounce on each other.
I mean, it kind of felt like, it felt more like that last year with like Austin and JT, and I think this time around with having JT, he had lots of things. He had things to answer for, and you could see it. Like, how they showed Ryan at one point after the tuba party having his confrontation with JT, and they kind of show Ryan like fumbling his words a little bit. And I'm like, in the moment, I don't remember it being like him sounding like that, so I don't know what that was, but it's kind of this karma thing happened because at the reunion, JT's doing that same thing where he's kind of like fumbling over his words and trying to answer for.
I mean, I'm happy JT came back for the reunion because I know he had left at one point. But I mean, can you explain to the audience? I'm still like, what is the Vanita JT story? Because it seems now like it's long, it's a saga. I don't get the timeline of things. Like, Vanita had a boyfriend at the beginning of the season that went off to do Broadway, and I think they split up because he didn't want her going with them. And JT and Vanita were close, and then potentially JT had a girlfriend at the time, but Vanita, nobody knew about
this is
it.
a perfect time for a whiteboard.
Yeah, that's what, dude, I almost was like, how do we, because I got so confused. And then last episode, I finally gave up and I was like, I'm just going to trust Vanita. Like, I'm just going to trust Vanita here.
Or get faces, like everyone's face on a magnet, and you just do a magnet board and just do that kind of stuff.
Well, how do you understand it?
Well, first off, I always thought it was incredibly weird, like watching them interacting on the way to Camden, the horse race. And just
the first episode of the season.
Yeah, just watching them kind of being flirty. And then, I said this in the after show, like when I heard how much they spent on this outfit, and I'm like, listen, is it nice? Sure. It's nice, but I'm like, I wouldn't spend fucking $5,000.
$5,000.
But whatever it was, like $4,200 or whatever. I mean, whatever the receipt said that JT posted. But I'm like, very nice, but I'm like, you can get this look for less. Like, I'm like, here I am trying to be like a fashionista, a Maxinista here. I'm like, let's get this look for less somewhere else.
Reality shows on a budget.
I know. I'm like, it's fine, but I'm like, I wouldn't have spent that on this out. I mean, he's literally still has wounds, like open wounds from his over
the ATV accident,
and he's literally bleeding through his shirt. And I'm like, ay. And I'm
the $5,000 shirt.
He's bleeding through that. I think this jacket's white. He had to stop to pee about a minute.
And he bought a bunch of canes for everybody, which then led to the Miss Patricia fight.
Yeah, I mean, and you could tell he wasn't wearing underwear because he kept peeing. And then you could see like a little dribble spot, and I was like, ay. I'm like, here you're bleeding and peeing all over your outfit.
It's called reality TV show gold.
Yeah, but I mean, luckily they didn't show all the stops for the peeing.
I want all the. You could have made a whole bit out of that, but you're also saying you noticed how close they were on that.
Yeah. So and I just was like, okay, I'm like, I see something happening here. And I had conversations with Madison and Austin separately about what do we think is going on here, and separately we're all like, yeah, I mean, I think they should just go for it. And then none of us really knew, and to my knowledge this girl was just somebody that was kind of part of his circle.
Yeah.
But, I mean, was never introduced as his girlfriend. I mean, I know her, but not
you
very
knew
well.
of her.
Yeah, I mean, she's a nice girl. I mean, at that point, we follow each other on Instagram, and I had nothing but nice interactions with her, but I just don't know the timeline, and it's just very sketchy. And then after we filmed, to then start kind of dating Vanita, and then
that was the other confusing thing, because the finale, then it says they actually did date after the finale, and then broke up, and we found out it's the same girl, but he wasn't dating that girl at the time they started dating, and then they started dating again. It got a little confusing.
Yeah, so they were definitely hanging out. Vanita was literally just so smitten, it was disgusting. It really just was she was just she was all about it.
She was defending him in every talking head.
She couldn't have enough JT, and she literally was thinking that if anyone I got his back, he got mine. I was like, no, he doesn't. But she learned the hard way. But I mean, he was sending her pictures after they would make out, showing him with her makeup all over his face,
like the Joker.
Yeah, to be kind of being oh, you I still have you on me, kind of thing, or something. Ugh. Exactly.
Yeah,
something just
no offense, JT. Yeah, but yeah.
But I mean, just okay, I get it, I guess. And we had went to have drinks with Vanita for her birthday, and JT had come to the same wine bar, and Tyler kind of called it at the moment, because it was me and Tyler, and we're the only people from the show, I guess, we were there to have wine. And Tyler was just there's something really off with JT. It's he's hanging more on me than Vanita. It was he always flirts. I mean, with Tyler, he's just joking. He's telling me that I'm gonna steal Tyler away from you. I'm like, okay, good luck, come whatever. But in that night, he definitely was a little standoffish. So when there was time for a picture, he just wanted Tyler to be in between both of them.
So you're saying that potentially this is a new romance brewing next season between your fiance and JT.
Yeah.
That's what we potentially could get next season.
Potentially.
No, I'm just so confused, and it seems like Vanita's very hurt, but I was just still trying to figure out the timeline, and I'm glad.
So that's in October. So at that point, I think our super teaser for the show was coming not too long after that, and I think that's when their blossoming, budding romance was starting to come out, like I think that stirred up whatever was going on with this ex-girlfriend, who then it makes no sense. All of a sudden, then they get in a fight. And I know that they've been seeing each other because they've been going on dates. She's been so giddy, and she's telling me all about it because I am close with Vanita. So then you guys like having weird awkwardness because this girl's going out DMing, like putting posts, like putting you guys on blast. So it was weird to think that the reaction would be to then start dating the other girl. I'm like, how did that make any sense?
And then make it Instagram official, where it's announced to the world, or and also to you guys.
Yeah.
And so how do you explain somebody like JT? Like JT knew, this was his second season, and we've also seen relationships on Southern Charm, and I guess you could say Austin and Madison. They seem like the best of buds right now.
Yeah.
Like Austin looks so thrilled when she was she came through all pregnant. He's like, no way. And so we know that bridges can be repaired and stuff like that. Do you see JT and Vanita mending this, whatever this is?
I have to say, I think that ultimately, I think Vanita would still like a relationship with him.
But that's potentially dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, as crazy as it sounds to you or me, I'm like, yeah, this sounds crazy, but I think that she's very open to that idea.
But he's also weirdly, and you're going to laugh at me, he can be weirdly charming on screen.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely.
It's different than like how like Craig is charming or Austin is charming or Shep is charming. It's different, but it's still charming.
No, listen, 100%. I mean, I completely get that. I mean, he is a little theatrical, little drama queen himself. So, I mean, obviously, I get that. I mean, he can be very funny. I've had like good laughs with him. I've hung out with him socially outside of.
Did you ever have to have a serious conversation with him after filming or anything like that, where he wanted to talk to you?
Well, not so much about like what was going on with him and Vanita or him or anybody else, because he owns like a bunch of Airbnbs like in Charleston. Have you been to Charleston? Yeah,
I just went for the first time like in October. It was awesome.
I mean, great time of year to come to Charleston. But he has a bunch of Airbnbs, and I'm an interior designer, so I helped like go and kind of zhuzh up
Well, he's got the mom's painting and your zhuzh.
Yeah, that's all you need. And honestly, he seemed to be very happy. And so we had that working relationship going. And, Andy actually kind of brought it up at the reunion. I don't think we touched on that quite yet. Maybe that's for the part 2. But, that side, we were fine because I've done business with him. And, I thought maybe this was something that could be more on the show. But he didn't really open up about any of the situation with the girlfriend.
Are you on a text thread right now with the group, and is JT included on that? Because I always, when I talk to housewives or any reality show people, I'm like,
he's not on it.
That's what I was wondering. Like, are you guys, like, is there an excitement from the cast of like, oh, the reunion's airing tonight, hope people like it?
No, we're not doing anything like that. But if there's something funny, that gets sent, or there's like some news, that kind of thing. It's not being like, hey guys, can't wait to see you guys on TV tonight. Golly, we look good.
Craig looks handsome.
Yeah, like boy, everyone says Craig looks handsome. The rest of us look like shit.
Well, listen, okay, I do have to say this is a very, and by the way, do yourself a favor, follow Rod on you're one of my favorite follows on Threads. I'm no longer really doing Twitter, but Threads, and I always love because you speak your mind. Like you have no but no. Sometimes I'm like, God, I wish I had that kind of. I'll make silly memes about Bravo celebrities and stuff, but sometimes I'm like, you really speak up for what you believe in.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about, this is also very serious. Is where do you stand in the Great Spritzer Wars of 2025, because we have Summer House versus Southern Charm, and I feel like once BravoCon hits, there's going to be a cage match between the two casts.
I didn't think we were going to go there.
Yeah, no, Rod, if you could just don't leave, just sit with it. It's very serious. This is going to be broadcast to tens of thousands of people.
Ryan, you know good and damn well.
Yeah.
On Spritz Society.
Your Spritz Society.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So not Team Loverboy.
Nah.
You should expect a very angry DM from Kyle Cook within the week.
He's like, Rod who? Wait, who said what?
Wait, do you watch Summer House?
I've never watched a full episode of it. I mean,
really?
not that it's not good. It's just
No.
I just like it just in my other Bravo shows I'm trying to keep up with.
What shows do you keep up with?
Salt Lake City.
Wasn't that incredible?
I mean, what a season! It was like there was no filler episode.
That's what I'm saying. It was a banger. It's like there was never a bad filler episode.
Yeah, and this is what my fiance he points out. I mean, he's like a big Bravo fan. Like I feel like now that he's seen how the sausage is made, like he sees things differently, and his takes are actually really good. Where he's like, I want Southern Charm to be like how Salt Lake City is in terms of these women can get in petty fights, but they're in group settings, getting little fights. You fight about that and you kind of move on. He's like, you guys seem to just harp on the same shit and beat it to death. And I was like, I get it. I wish there'd be more like, all right, come on, let's overcome this. And hey, guess what? The likelihood there's going to be more shit that's going to happen.
Well, I mean, but as you get older, I think in real life you were trying to stay away from shit. Yeah. You were trying to Tom Sandoval once told me on the show, pre-Scandal, is that normal people will run away from any kind of like drama or fights, and in reality shows you have to run directly into it.
Yeah.
And that can be really uncomfortable for people. And you see a lot of turnover with the women of Southern Charm. So this season you have Molly, who had like a Shep liaison towards the end of the season or the very final episode,
and then you fireworks, baby.
You have Sally, and Sally and Taylor kind of got into it, and I'm still kind of getting the hang of Sally and what what she represents and brings to the show. Well, actually, Molly, you guys were really harping on her to like hook up with Shep.
I mean, I wasn't.
I mean, everybody else was. Like everybody was, and where I was like, I mean, she kind of has to hook up with Shep.
Well, at that point, I mean, everyone's like pushing, like everyone's acting as pimp.
I know, and then I was like, we don't even get. We could have gotten like footage on the car ride home, and then it just says her streak was ended that night, and we were to assume it was Shep.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think that maybe they went back to Molly's house, and she had all her all her tubas like right there. Like, can you imagine like Shep's like foot like in the tuba, three of her cats are on the bed. And
he's giving like I know a lot about the tuba. 1853. Yeah. No, I mean it's got to be wild to see when the cameras are up, because then it's like, oh, they've got the hot potato right now. We're focusing on them, and the goal potentially is to get them to hook up to make Shep feel better about.
Yeah, wouldn't you like to have seen like when Shep like went to Molly like in for a kiss, and then he goes and pulls a shark ear from behind her ear, a shark's tooth, a shark's tooth
or
from
the
behind.
First kiss, and he's like, somebody just won a megalodon tooth.
Yeah. Or they're making out and he goes, oh, hold on. Here you go.
He did look good with the beard and the Sgt.
No, yeah,
Pepper.
he looked really good.
He had some wild fashion, but sometimes I was like,
I thought he looked good at the reunion too.
No, he actually did look good. But it is funny where we started the season with Shep, where he was like, ayahuasca is like 3 years of therapy, and we had the BravoCon experience where I first met you at BravoCon, or got to say a quick hello, and that was the BravoCon that people still talk about in regards to Shep.
Oh Lord, I mean, trust me, like talk about like boots on the ground and watching it happen in real time. I'm just like, holy shit.
Was it as shocking as Craig and Andy and all those people say? Was it like, because I remember Friday night at the Bravo Awards where I was like, sitting like a row or two behind all of those guys, and Shep had that 1,000-yard stare, but I was like, oh, I wonder what's all happening here, and it seems like it might have gotten worse throughout the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, they had me show up on Saturday, so
this was Friday night.
I know, no. Things went like spiraled Saturday, like that's when it was like the absolute worst.
But then you see that, he's lean, mean fighting machine. He's dieting, he's working out, but he's also did ayahuasca, and now he feels like he's therapized himself enough.
Yeah.
And he's talking about these visions he's having of like Austin's like sister and Taylor like being a baby bird. And it was like so funny, but it's like, oh my God, you could also go to therapy.
Yeah, and then he's also like using it. He's like, oh, let's go sit down for ice cream. Let's go grab ice cream. I'm like, okay, cool it, Joe Biden. I'm like, you don't need to go out and just because I don't know. Do you smoke ayahuasca? Is that what you do?
I don't know how you do ayahuasca.
Okay, let's just say you inject it in your veins. So like after you get your hit of ayahuasca, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I want to take my ex out for ice cream. I'm like, really? I'm like, what are you looking at? What are you seeing here?
But see, that's what I love about Southern Charm is that it's like really like these boys learning to be men, even though they think they're already men, and it's like male egos coming, clashing with each other.
Yeah.
I just have a couple more minutes, and I know this has been a blast so far. Real quick thoughts on Craig and Paige. If you are Spritz Society, I would imagine. But isn't it weird as we get older to be Team Craig or Team Paige?
Yeah.
Or are you Team Craig?
I'm Team Craig. I mean, yeah. I mean, Craig's my friend. I've known Craig as long as the show. Like, past like, I've known Craig 13 years. I'm always rooting for him. I want him to like be happy and successful. And obviously, right now, it's just clear that he and Paige weren't
on the same page.
They weren't on the same page. They weren't meant to be. And I just want him to be able to find, that person that's going to be perfect for him, that is going to want to hang out in his beautiful backyard.
By the way, I will say that it really is like, it's a beautiful backyard. Like,
oh my God, it's insane.
As I get older, I'm like, yeah, I would hang back there all the time as well.
And he did the right thing. He like put in like mature trees like along the fence. And I was like, oh man, that's where it's at. I mean, you have to pay for that.
But we don't, I mean, I don't know. I just keep thinking like, we don't really have to demonize either side, even though it is interesting to have reality shows on at the time you go through a breakup, because the Bravo audience is so hungry for drama or for Scandival that like little pieces of information leak out and you're like, oh, I know it's Paige's fault or it's Craig's fault.
Yeah.
And
well, for me, I look at it as like, listen, I want the best for both of them. I think they're both really good people. Like, I'm not as close to Paige as I am with Craig, obviously. But I mean, I do consider her a friend, and just know that it sucks. I mean, it probably wasn't an easy decision for either one of them. Well, Paige to make.
Yeah.
I would say,
but Craig, I mean, ladies, and this could partly be like on the show, but every time I listen to Craig speak or I watch one of his videos where he's on like some conference for couches or something, he always makes sense, or he always seems like it seems different from Craig of years past on Southern Charm, but now they keep, and it's this season as well, there was like hit after hit of him being stretching the truth, or he's lying. Has that been your experience? Because you're his friend.
I mean, I've never known. Listen, I think Craig, like you said, he's a storyteller. I mean, I don't think he's a
storyteller and a lawyer.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything malicious about like a characterization that he's trying to. I don't think that's like he would outwardly lie about something. I think maybe some things can get misconstrued, sure, but I mean, I wouldn't ever think to call him a malicious
I'm just
liar.
wondering if he misheard the Miss Patricia is a biatch from JT, because you don't, like, JT's not the most trustworthy guy, but then they paint Craig out to be like a fibber, and I'm trying to like determine which one is true.
Well, and when it comes down to that whole thing with Miss Patricia, like, I honestly think that, Craig hasn't changed like one bit, but his story is about what happened. Like, he stands by that. And I, at this point, and I've said this, previously, that now that we've seen with JT, there's been many times where he's also getting caught up with mishandling the truth. So now that puts him, his credibility in question as well. Yeah. So I'm like, all right, well, you're saying that Craig's not truthful, but what's all this stuff here you're doing with Vanita? Yeah. Where you're showing yourself being not truthful, and you're not the gentleman that you're saying that you are. So that's why
you're doing F-boy exorcisms on Austin, but it could be done to you as well.
In that moment, I see it's like, listen, JT, like, I don't think it's for you to be. You're not the messenger to be calling Craig a liar when you're caught up in your own series of lies. Yeah. I was like, enough. Leave my Spritz Society boy alone.
Leave my Spritz Society. Okay, so finally, you're recently engaged. I think there's definitely going to be another season of Southern Charm. I think that's in the bag. I know you can't say if it is or not. Would you be willing to get married on camera?
Man, I mean, I think, I've said this out loud. I feel like that's kind of like asking for it. That's like really asking.
No, a vow renewal is asking for it. Vow renewals on housewife shows are always like you're in the grave. But a wedding is a little different. Well, not a lot different, but a little. And also, I mean,
Teresa got married on TV. What's her second wedding?
Katie Maloney and Schwartz from Vanderpump got married on TV.
About that.
Well, but you could actually break the curse.
I don't know. I have really terrible luck. So I feel like, no, I feel like it's a recipe for disaster. But you're right.
But it would be a great season of reality TV about leading up to it. And would you choose out of the men of Southern Charm, who would be your best man?
Austin. Oh yeah, hands down, Austin. I mean, he's one of my closest friends. I'm like, literally, we hang out all the time. We constantly are gossiping back and forth. And I say, like, we're just a couple of yentas just constantly just kibitzing about everything. So yeah, he's my closest friend on the show, definitely.
He's the closest. Okay.
Yeah.
Please pass my apologies along to Austin. I was really hard on him a couple of years ago, and I think he is.
Why you guys? Does
he was on
blocked?
Summer House, and I started a Change.org petition to get him off of Summer House, and he's very aware of it. And at one point, I was going to be on Craig and his Pillows and Beer, I think, and then it just kind of went from nowhere. But listen, I see that he's.
Wait, is that still up? Is that something I can look up?
Oh yeah,
find?
I mean, but it's a couple years ago, but you can still find it. It was a Change.org to get Austin Kroll off Summer House.
Oh my god,
because he was like in Devil Boy.
Well, and guess what? He's not on there anymore.
So
Look at that.
Change.org worked.
Wait, did you start one for ending of Winter House? Is that you're doing as well?
No, that's not me. No,
Okay.
it was no. I like Winter House. I want Winter House to like come back.
I've never seen. I mean, I just knew that Austin was on the show, and I just remember his Winter House like character photo. I forget what that's called properly, but I just remember looking at that picture and being like, wow, he looks like Jane Lynch. I'm like, that's all I think about when I see his cast photo. Yeah, I was like, I actually made a meme about that where I was like, it's like Jane Lynch plus Joe Dirt equals Austin.
Well, I bumped into him at a fish show at the Sphere, and I was like, "Hey, bud, can I get a picture?" Like, I didn't say like, "Hey," like, because I think he's aware of me, but I was like, I was just cracking up because I know he's a huge fish fan.
I was texting him during that show. I was literally watching that show live with some other friends, texting him, and I thought to myself, what am I doing with my life? I'm watching fish live on TV. Austin's there. We're texting about it. I'm like, I have problems.
Well, my favorite was when he was like over the pandemic when he was watching the New Year's shows online, and they have like a shot of him like dressed as the Joker. Anywho, you love White Lotus, and you saw that Mike White watches Southern Charm.
Oh my God, that was just insane. Like just the idea that Parker Posey maybe just saw me making a shitty face in the background of some scene,
and you're
like,
part of her character development.
I mean, it's obviously more towards like, the guys and Patricia, which I think, is fantastic. But I'm like, just the idea to think that she would even think about.
And that Mike White would actually watch this show and go, I'm going to base the Ratliff family off Southern Charm.
And man, his, what's his, Jason Isaacs?
Jason Isaacs, yeah.
His like, he literally looks like Thomas, sounds like Thomas. It's just beyond.
It's eerie. Anyways, one last thing. Can you give us an Austin Madison? Perfect. I hope you win tonight. What will you say if you win? Do you accept the award?
I'm going to thank the almighty Andy Cohen for making all of this possible. And then go like this to everybody.
Gerard, this was a treat. Thank you so much for coming in person. I really appreciate it, dude.
Thanks.